Hi, you guys. I'm just doing a check to make sure everyone can hear me. Can someone just respond if you can hear me?
I can hear you. This is Kathy.
Thanks so much, Miss Islin. Thanks to everyone else. Thank you. Mr. Vandenbout, do you have a PC or are you working on a Mac? I don't think Mr. Vandenbout is
Oh,
that.
can you hear me?
Hi, Mr. Vandenbout. Yes, we can
Yeah,
hear you. Are you
okay.
working on a PC or from a Mac tonight?
Sadly, I'm working on a Mac, so I need somebody's help, I think, to turn pages or something.
Yes, that's why I'm verifying. Is there anyone on the committee?
Thank you.
Is there anyone on the committee working from a PC that can pull up the slides for 1235 Dean to be able to share their screen during the presentation? Anyone? Anyone?
I'm also trying to figure out how to get my camera to work. But let's see.
Is there anyone present on the committee working from a PC that is able to share their screen during the 1235 Dean presentation? I will take that as a no.
Hey, good evening, everyone. It's Sharon Wedderburn. I just wanted to say we're at the start of our meeting, which is 6:15, as you may well be able to observe. No, I haven't started my celebration for the weekend yet. It's Thursday. That we do not have a sufficient number of members of the committee present that would constitute quorum. So we're just going to give everybody a few next minutes to see who comes in and joins our August 2023 summertime meeting. And at that point, when we have more people in the room, I will ask Ms. Neal to call the roll. Once again, you're hearing for a call for volunteers to share their screen because there are going to be documents presented by both applicants from 1235 Dean Street and 962 Pacific. I would like to reserve the right that I have the full utility of my screen, but we need collaboration in which we can be able to do this. The representative from the applicant is using a Mac, and as you may remember, a Mac is not compatible with WebEx for the purposes of sharing screens. Check back in a few. Bye.
Ms. Lemla, is Jack on the call with you as well?
Yes, it's the two of us.
Yeah, both of us.
Thank you.
Ms. Neal, Mr. Albert is going to share screen with us, so we'll be able to have some visual. One more minute, and let's just check to see if we have quorum, please. All right, everyone. Good evening. The time is now 6:21. Ms. Neal, would you do us the favor of taking roll so we can find out if we have the sufficient quantity that would constitute a quorum?
Pierre Albert? Pierre Albert?
Present.
Thank you. Albert Appleton?
Present.
Thank you. Lisa Atkinson? Princess Ben James? Robert Callahan? Edward Delman?
Present.
Thank you. Michael Francoeur? Aaron Gray? Kathy Islin?
Yes.
Thank you. Jennifer Jordan? Zerzima Jordan? Nicole Lemla?
Present.
Francis Langley?
Present.
Dr. Sarah Lazar?
Present.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Langley. Thank you, Ms. Lemla. Sorry, I forgot to say thank you. Quasi Menza? Mimi Mitchell? Bia Ortiz Joyner?
Present.
Thank you. Brianna Peppers? Robert Puka? Jack Robinson?
Present.
Thank you. Kim Robinson? Mark Thurton? Ethel Tias? Giv Vaconi? Sharon Wedderburn?
Here.
Thank you. Elaine Weinstein?
Present.
Thank you. Deborah Young?
Present.
Thank you. Chairperson Wedderburn, we are short of a quorum by 3 members.
Okay, so what we're going to do in the interest of time, man, I look like I've been enjoying my summer, right? Beach hair and all the whole nine. So in the interest of time, because we have to vote on 1235 Dean Street, I'm going to ask the applicants from 962 Pacific to step forward so that we might be able to end this meeting in a timely fashion and stop the notion that all land use meetings are exceedingly long. So with that, I see Ms. Olsner's in the chat. Ms. Olsner, would you like to say something and introduce your team for the purposes of presentation? Tell us where you are in your process.
Okay, great. Thank you. Do you want me, Ms. Witterburn, would you like me to start the presentation now? Would you like us to do that?
Absolutely. We're going to ask you to
Okay.
present first.
Thank you. And thank you for having us.
Do you know what the phone is?
Fayanne, do you have the slide presentation? Thank you. Okay. Hello, I'm Nadine Olsner, the applicant of 962 Pacific Street. Thank you for having me here again tonight. We are here with our applicant team and our partners, our rezoning attorneys, Richard LaBelle and Fayanne Batan from Sheldon LaBelle, our architect, Nick Liberis from Archimera, our environmental review consultant, Kevin Williams from GCA, our partner, Leah Archibald from Evergreen Exchange, our partner, Jay Marcus from Fifth Avenue Committee. On the second slide, on the next slide, you'll see, certainly I'm not a stranger to any of you. Our family has been long-term stakeholders in this community for over 70 years, and we have always been active participants in the neighborhood and CB8. In the last year alone, we have presented to this committee 6 times and have been consistently involved since the inception of the M-Crown subcommittee rezoning process, including the most recent AIM-UP working sessions. On slide 3, you will see the lot. Over the years, 962 Pacific Street was used for the storage of used cars. About 15 years ago, we consolidated multiple parcels into one lot, which we rented until 2018 to a local business owner who used it for truck and property storage. In 2018, we took a loan on the property and used the proceeds to clean up the lot and help relocate the business owner to Red Hook. 962 Pacific Street has now been vacant for the past 5 years, and we have patiently waited for the city to complete its review of our rezoning application. Slide 4. As you know, the site sits in the heart of a fast-changing neighborhood. This slide is the most recent CB8 needs assessment. It identifies land use trends as a top issue, with the need for affordable housing a major component of that issue. Also, through our involvement in the M-Crown planning process, we understand the imperative that any new housing development also balances the need for preserving industrial and manufacturing uses in the area. We get this. We see the potential for 962 Pacific Street to try and achieve 2 major objectives as outlined by the community board: creating affordable housing and preserving space for M-Crown use. Slide 5. As many of you well know, over the past 3 years, 5 sites have been rezoned in the immediate 2-block area of our site. You can see from the slide that the entire eastern and western sections of our block, including a piece of 962 Pacific, have been rezoned to R7A. Unfortunately, of the 3 rezonings that have resulted in R7A zoning, none has committed to M-Crown uses. That is something we hope to address at 962 Pacific Street. We need to create much needed housing and preserve manufacturing space in keeping with the M-Crown framework. The next slide. This slide demonstrates our work towards the rezoning process over the past 10 years. After the city presented the community board with the M-Crown rezoning framework in 2018, we secured project financing and began work to remediate the site at the cost of several $1 million. We are now headed towards a major crossroads in this process. After 4 years of proceeding with our application in good faith, we have now been told that we must wait several more years before the site will be rezoned. The problem is that our loan has grown over the years due to the delays in filing, which will soon force us to make some hard choices and potentially risk losing the site. The next slide. The proposal we bring forth tonight accomplishes three main goals. One, it provides much needed affordable housing on a site that is shovel ready. Two, in light of COVID, the majority of the residential units include home office space to allow work from home opportunities in this evolving work environment. Three, it provides close to 30,000 square feet of M-Crown uses, made up of approximately 20,000 square feet of manufacturing M-Crown space and a 10,000 square foot early childhood educational center, providing high quality and affordable care for working families within the surrounding community. I'm going to turn it over to our land use attorney, Richard LaBelle, to walk you through the zoning actions that would be needed to achieve these benefits. Thank you, Richard.
Thanks,
Richard?
Nadine, and good evening to everyone on the community board. Once again, Richard LaBelle. So you can see the current zoning right now and the M designation for the site, as well as the surrounding land use designations, particularly along this portion of Pacific Street. And if we go to the next slide, which is a land use map, which demonstrates with more particularity the surrounding zoning, you could see something that's quite interesting in this area, which is that of 25 lots fronting on Pacific Street along this block frontage, 24 of them are zoned for an R7A equivalent. And that was basically pursuant to two prior rezonings focusing on the Pacific Street frontage in the form of 1010 and 1050 Pacific, and the Grand and Pacific Street rezoning, which was R7D to the north and R7A to the south. So in essence, the fact that this lot is zone manufacturing is out of context with the existing land use in the area. Importantly, if you go to the next slide, the rezonings along Pacific Street basically followed what was then the M-Crown framework and has since been further discussed by the community in requesting this mid-block area, which would allow for mixed use, including ground floor M-Crown uses and residential use above, in the context of roughly a 4 FAR. The R7A permits a 4.6. So I think the next slide really kind of summarizes well why this is such an important rezoning and why it's really good for this block in terms of allowing for continuity of use. You can see all of the rezonings that are highlighted in green. They are R7A districts, which allow for 4.6 FAR for residential. And to the right in dark green, M14 R7A, which allows for the same residential equivalent. The pink lot represents Nadine's lot, and this is the only one that maintains an M designation right now. So the bottom line is that the difference, and the important difference between all of those lots and our lot, is that all of those lots were basically granted R7A with no restriction. Those lots were basically permitted to engage in whatever uses they wanted in the ground floor, would not be required to provide any community facility uses, and would generally be essentially providing MIH and nothing else. Whereas Nadine, as she's made clear on the many occasions she's been before the community board, is happy to engage in this process, has worked with local representatives in terms of finding a good affordable housing partner in terms of Fifth Avenue Committee, and most importantly, is allowing for not merely the minimum in terms of just providing an MIH building, but in providing binding agreements which would allow for M-Crown uses and an overage of community facility space in terms of the early childhood center. So I think with that, I would just close by saying that we are now in the ULURP process. I believe that the community board has until September 27th to issue determination. And we're really looking forward to working with the community board and, hopefully moving forward on what we feel is an application that has a lot of merit. And so the rezoning actions, again, are for imposition of MIH, for a special permit, which would reduce parking at the site, and importantly for rezoning, which here would allow for the M14R78 designation that you see on the screen. And with that, I would return the presentation to Nadine.
Thank you, Richard. We touched on this earlier, but just to reiterate the highlights of the building program and proposal. Regarding affordable housing, if approved by Community Board and Councilmember Hudson, 962 Pacific Street would bring approximately 150 new housing units to the neighborhood, with approximately 40 of those units permanently affordable under option 1, which includes 10% of the building units at an AMI of 40%. We think it is of critical importance that this building will transform a now vacant lot into new homes for neighborhood families. While R7A zoning would allow for up to 199 units across our site, we are only proposing approximately 150 units here. We have purposely and intentionally eliminated all studio apartments from this proposed building and instead created 1, 2, and 3-bedroom spacious units in order to accommodate the tenants in this community that need housing the most, working families. In the next slide, slide 13, consistent with prior community board discussions, we have focused on MIH option 1 with affordable units provided at an average of 60% AMI. This would allow us to provide nearly 40 affordable apartments in this building at AMI ranging from approximately 40 to 70,000 per year. All tenants, regardless of rent level, will have access to the building's amenities, and the finishes in the affordable units will be exactly the same as the market rate ones. We want everyone in the building to feel like the value tenant they are. We have partnered with Fifth Avenue Committee, a well-respected affordable housing advocate, to advise us on this portion of the building and eventually administer the affordable housing lottery. Jane Marcus, Director of Real Estate at FAC, is here with us tonight and can take any questions you have. On slide 14, regarding M-Crown uses, we have designated almost 2/3 of the commercial space in the building towards these uses. Currently, the entire cellar level of the building, nearly 20,000 square feet, is contemplated for M-Crown. And to help us curate the space, we have forged a partnership with industrial advocate Evergreen Exchange to advise us on what industrial uses currently need space in the area and with a focus on providing job opportunities to local residents. And Leah is on the call with us and she can answer any questions you might have. On the next slide, through thoughtful design, we believe we can create a ground floor entrance into the space worthy of local makers and job providers that elevates their standing in the neighborhood and have added rear yard skylights that allow for natural light to flow into many of their workspaces. We are joined tonight by Leah Archibald, and as mentioned before, she can answer your questions. In the next slide, regarding the Early Childhood Center, we understand from the CB8 needs assessment that more and more families and young adults looking to start families have been moving into the district, driving a demand for child-focused resources. To address this, we propose the creation of the Early Childhood Education Center that would also be a great complement to the live-work model, not to mention creating dozens of jobs. The Educational Center is an important part of the project to me personally, and we have been following this industry for over 35 years, and we have been involved with it in different capacities. Slide 17. Access to an early childhood development center is more critical now than ever, with reports showing that early childhood enrollment dropped drastically during the pandemic, disproportionately affecting disabled learners, children of color, and those from low-income households. And in slide 18, and on the public education side, there are reports every day about budget constraints faced by the Department of Education. That means newer programs like expanded 3K are on the potential chopping block, and there are no plans to build new public early educational centers in this district. So there's a demand for other independent educational programs to fill the gap. You asked us to tell you more about the potential early childhood providers for the ground floor space. We have conceptualized for this much desired community use. We heard your request that you wanted low cost, effective educational options for children in the community. While it is still very early in the process, we have outreached to and begun preliminary conversations with several educational institutions in Brooklyn. Because we imagine a program that could offer early childhood classes that complement the businesses in the building, we approached both STEAM-based educational best-in-class providers like Brooklyn Preschool of Science to local community-based providers like University Settlement and Little Some People that can focus on serving the needs of neighborhood families and could provide low-cost, effective educational options. We look forward to continuing these discussions and entertaining other ideas from you about desired providers in the months to come. Imagine a program that offers early childhood classes that complement the businesses in the building. STEAM-based educational offerings from robotics to the creative arts to nature days that could be offered at a priority to children in the district. As mentioned before, we have already begun preliminary conversations with educational institutions in Brooklyn with a focus on serving the needs of neighborhood families and providing low-cost, effective educational options. Regarding home office space, we have worked with our architects to design an innovative residential model that we think has great relevance in the post-pandemic era, where so many now work remotely. Next slide. As such, our architects have designed the residential units where the majority feature home office space available to all unit sizes and income levels within the building. Finally, a ground floor activated by commercial use, such as a cafe or bookstore, will ensure this building enhances the vibrancy of the neighborhood. In sum, we hope that our commitment to the community shines through, both in what this development seeks to create and in how we have tried to work collaboratively with the community to achieve it. What we are proposing at 962 Pacific Street provides a way to create the model that we all have been fighting for. We do not believe the current as-of-right uses are the best outcome for this site. Creating a bus parking lot or a last-mile distribution center, for instance, that would bring undesirable traffic to the neighborhood, or returning the site to a self-storage facility use that does nothing to contribute to the area's vitality. Instead, we want to transform a now vacant space into jobs and housing. We envision a future for 962 Pacific Street that looks like 150 new residential units, nearly 40 of them permanently affordable, an early educational center that would enroll dozens of young learners. Excuse me. And commercial and M-Crown uses that could create approximately 100 jobs. To achieve these benefits, we have undertaken a good faith effort over the past decade to put together the financing to ready this site for development. We are one of the few women-owned businesses with a site left in the M-Crown area. But with the continued uncertainty of the city timeline and in the financial markets today, as interest rates rise uncontrollably, we fear the consequences could be dire if we do not proceed with their application soon. I am humbly asking you for your support. We stand ready to work with you to progress this application, and we would be happy to answer any questions you have and take your comments and suggestions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Olsen. Thank you for your team. I just wanted to remind our committee that we will not be voting on this matter tonight, but we will be voting on this matter in our September meeting, which will be September 7th. We have to have a comment back to the powers that be no later than September 27th, which is going to give us a pretty compact timeline for response. So I'm asking each and every one of you to carefully consider any questions that you have, anything that you might desire to see from the applicant, so that when we consider this matter in September, it will be efficient and it will speak to the heart of what we would like to see in a project should we decide to improve it. So with that said, I'm asking for volunteers for questions, concerns, answers, and please use the raise the hand feature so that I might be able to recognize you. And I do see a few people. Gib, I'm going to ask Elaine to go before you, and then the order will be the order will be Elaine, Gib, Ethel Tyus, and Sarah Lazar. Fior. So hold on one second. Now I have to write this down. Okay, go ahead, Elaine.
Okay, thank you. Just a quick question. Have you yet engaged the developer, or are you planning to develop the property yourselves?
Okay, good. Thank you for that question. We have been long-term stakeholders in the community, and we plan on staying in the community. And currently, we are talking to different developers to do a joint venture to build the building and to stay here for more decades. We have spent a lot of time here. We have spent over a decade working with the community board, and we have designed a program for 962 Pacific Street that we feel will echo what will come out of the AMOP. And so we are looking for a developer that shares our values and the values of the community, and we plan on staying. Thank you.
So Ms. Olsen, I'm going to take chair prerogative with that question. So are you saying that you're going to form a joint venture so that you would maintain a significant ownership stake, and significant is greater than 50% on an ongoing basis?
I pray to God we can keep this property and we can have a controlling interest. Thank you. And that's why we come here to work with you all. We do not want to wait several more years as the AMA process goes through. The quicker that we can work, then that means with you all and move forward means that we can build this building and we could stay in the neighborhood and we could build the building that we are presenting to you today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Gib, go ahead.
Good evening. Thank you. I have a question and then maybe a comment or two. The question is, with respect to the non-residential use on the first floor, at one point there was some discussion about some other type of commercial use other than the early childhood center and the manufacturing use. I didn't hear that in your description now, though. Is that no longer part of the vision?
You're talking about that extra 8,000 square feet that we're talking about having a bookstore and a cafe. Is that what you're referring to?
Oh, so yeah, that's still part of the vision?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. I'll save my comments actually and let you guys go on with questions. Thank you.
Fior.
Thank you. I have two questions. I know previously, and it has been said a few times in the meeting, that you and your family have been in the community for 70 years, and you also describe yourself as a stakeholder. But other than owning property in the community, what else how do you call yourself a stakeholder? And secondly, will this property, even though it's not popular with developer nowadays, be providing parking. I know that, again, it's not popular, but the reality is that this development could possibly bring 150 additional vehicles to the immediate community. And in the renderings, I believe I saw in front of the building, like the curb was yellowed out. So will people be able to park in front of the building? Because that'll definitely change the dynamic of the block.
Okay, thank you for that question. I think it's actually two questions, and I'll answer the
It
first
is.
part. And then I'll give, I would like Richard to answer the second part. I think what you're at, we have been business owners in the area for over 70 years. And that's how we're a stakeholder. And we have owned these properties. And we had employed people for decades until the business that we were in was no longer viable. And then it became, we basically ended up using the property for what we could. And as mentioned earlier on in our presentation, we had a local man who was storing, he was storing all sorts of cars and different things on the property. And we moved him off the property in 2018 in anticipation of the rezoning to occur in the area. And we moved him to Red Hook. But Richard, I'll let you answer the second part. Thank you.
Sure, thanks, Nadine. So as part of the special permit, which is requested for the application, most of the rezonings that we're doing, particularly in Brooklyn, city planning is, as you've kind of intimated, has been asking for us to waive parking. So there are, for example, in this building would be over 50 spaces that would be required as per zoning. And the special permit, which is a separate application, separate findings by the City Planning Commission, would basically allow for them to eliminate parking at the site. And they look at certain aspects of the site, particularly how close they are to transportation, the availability of subway and bus service, the modal breakdown of what percent of owners in the building would likely, or users of the building would likely have cars, would go by bus, subway, et cetera. So I know that Kevin Williams is on the phone with us from GZA. Kevin, can you talk a little bit about the environmental impact and what was found in terms of the parking and traffic study that you conducted?
For Kevin Williams from GZA, as Rich noted. Can everybody hear me clearly?
Yes.
So as a part of the findings of the environmental assessment, as Rich noted, for the special permit to waive parking, we look at demand related to the project, and we look at on-street and off-street parking supply. And having worked in this neighborhood for 7 years on various environmental assessments, obviously parking is constrained in the direct area. There has been parking supply come online in Atlantic Avenue in terms of private garages, but the major aspect here is both the borough president and council members representing this district have indicated that they do not want to incentivize parking. And generally, when renters are going and looking for a building with residents or for a residential home for their families, parking is a mainstay of that aspect. So, the idea is if you supply parking, you're going to have people that own cars and use cars that are going to live there. There are 2 train stations within a 5-minute walk here on the same line, of course, and then there's the shuttle. There's express bus present on the corridor as well as regular, very strong bus service on Atlantic Avenue. In addition, car ownership in this area runs below 20%. So even though there is a within the realm of possibility, yes, you could have 150 people parking in the area, but statistically, even with the new developments coming in the area, that also some of them have parking waivers. I don't believe that it's a probability that that's the case. And also, I think the idea is that the project was developed not only with the goals of not enhancing car ownership, which is at a constrained condition, that by not supplying parking at the site, we're reducing vehicular traffic, that could potentially be associated with residential development in the district. So all of those aspects or considerations is why the special permit, was put forward, and why the results of the parking study actually showed, based on the estimated car ownership in the district, that there would be available supply for those owners or residents of the building that may wish to have a private car.
Thank you,
Whatever,
Kevin.
if I can just add one more thing, a question that wasn't answered. The rendering, will there be parking in front of the development? Because if you're not adding parking, I would hate for parking to be taken away.
I can answer that question. I'm not sure why that striping was there, but there is no plan for removal parking. The parking is as it is signed, and for them to do a change of parking, which I do all the time for various types of projects, would require that we go before this community board and request a change for DOT to consider. So no, there is no intended displacement of the current parking regulations.
Thank you.
Sarah, can you just wait a minute, because Kathy has put a couple of questions that are germane to the last things that were said by Kevin and Ms. Olsner. So can you go ahead, Kathy, and ask or read the questions from the chat to the
Sure. rest of the and thank you for letting me intercede before Ms. Tyus and Ms. Lazar. I was wondering, I wanted to follow up on the previous question about what it means to be a stakeholder in the community, and ask Ms. Olsner if she lives in the neighborhood. And because that would seem to me to be real evidence of being a stakeholder in the community. Also, commercial investment is being a stakeholder. I understand that, but I'd be curious about the answer to that question. And my second question is, I'm sorry, is it Kevin? 20% of what? When you're saying that, you know, 20% of, yes, but the neighborhood is, as Mr. LaBelle has represented most of the developers that are coming into the neighborhood, the neighborhood is about to change remarkably. So 20% of the current population does not represent what the neighborhood's going to look like in 5 to 7 years. So the car situation is going to be incredibly different. I'm not a proponent of parking or cars. I'm just saying that's not a real valid statistic given the change that's the neighborhood is undergoing. So I think that
I would expect, so excellent question, and I think very thoughtful. So based on my, just review of many applications such as this, the future does not point to more automobiles. It certainly did during COVID, where you saw a lot of additional purchasing of vehicles, but this area is the subject of a large transit-oriented corridor associated with Atlantic Avenue. In addition, I think there's going to be continual both political and social pressure for the reduction of cars, for shared parking strategies, which I think that future developments, as also noted in the presentation in June, that this community board and the young students that showed up were talking about shared parking, electric vehicles, and that sort of thing in buildings. So I don't expect, obviously throwing out a crystal ball and projecting, whether or not there are going to be increased demand is something that we could consider. But I will say this, even in some of the as of right developments that are a few blocks away, that are higher end, where you have higher, sort of car ownership that would be targeted towards those that have more disposable income. Even those buildings, I think the one on Dean Street that went up on the corner and on Franklin, those buildings don't have parking in them. So, we haven't seen over the history of 5 or 6 years, which I've been doing parking studies in this area, enhanced demand. So the parking capacity has basically remained very comparable, basically constrained. And that's sort of a combination of the reduction of some of the manufacturing areas and then residential coming online. But I personally, based on the variety of data that I've seen, an increase in car ownership, and if you compare citywide car ownership trends as well, higher income areas where people have more disposable income for cars, and high density neighborhoods that are supported by transit, we do not see numbers that exceed 25% of households owning one or more automobiles. That's the best I can do, but it's a very thoughtful question.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Can you do us a favor so that everybody can access that information? Because parking and the absence thereof, and the absence of electrical vehicle infrastructure, and opposition to shared ride being allowed to park on the streets, can you just bullet point your response so everybody can refer to it prior to the end of the meeting? Because I suspect there may be more questions.
I will try my best. You got it.
Thank you so much. So Ms. Lazar, and
And can
following
Ms.
that, Ms.
can Ms.
Tyus.
But can Ms. Olsner answer the other question that I asked about?
Oh, I'm so
Yes,
sorry.
okay.
Go ahead.
Kathy, we were using the term with respect to running commercial business, and currently we do not live in the area. We live outside of Brooklyn, but we would love to live in one of the buildings. Thank you.
Okay, so as I said before, Ms. Lazar, followed by Ms. Tyus, and then Ms. Lemay. Sarah?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Yeah, I'm a little frustrated with the affordability level that's being proposed here. You know, I've seen Ms. Olsner at the AMUP meetings, and you know, I think that attendees of those meetings made pretty clear that the desperate need in this neighborhood is for deeply affordable housing, and and something being, you know, this committee is being asked to kind of do something different, like to make an exception for this lot, so that it won't just be part of the neighborhood planning that is happening in the area. And I would have thought that there would be a stronger argument for why this would be in the community's interest. And I just have to say the many like almost identical rezoning applications that have been approved over and over again. I'm familiar with Mr. Lobel's space because he's been here for so many of them. Each of them is creating these apartments that are not affordable to people who live in the neighborhood and are increasing displacement pressure. Just like same block, but just a few blocks south of here, there is a rent stabilized building. It's 40 units, and the landlord is trying to deregulate the entire building based on an alleged substantial rehabilitation from the 1980s. It's ridiculous, and hopefully the tenants will be able to fight back against this. But you know, this is happening because they see that this neighborhood, they think, oh, we should be getting, instead of having, you know, rent stabilized prices that are affordable to working families, they think we should be getting $3,000 for a 1-bedroom, $4,000 for a 2-bedroom. Like, honestly, prices that are just outside of the realm of possibility. And you know, if this one building ends up getting deregulated, 40 families will be losing their homes. Are they going to be able to get into this building that's being built here, right? And additionally, all of the unaffordable units that are not part of the MIH, and again, MIH is just a threshold. We're going to be getting the MIH no matter what, right? Even if we force this to wait until then, until the overall rezoning. I just, you know, another building a little bit further, their landlord is trying to deregulate the whole thing by claiming they're going to demolish the building. Like, I don't feel like the urgency of truly affordable housing, like deeply affordable housing, is being felt by people who are making these proposals. And I'm just, not that I was super hopeful, but you know, it's disappointing, and I just wanted to express that, and I feel frustrated. That's all.
Happy to address some of the points that Sarah made. So first of all, I hear what you're saying, and you know, my view on my role and the role of zoning over the last 2 to 3 years has shifted somewhat in that you know, the idea of providing units both market rate and affordable is something where communities where this was not really something that was sought after, have now basically said, we need these spaces and we need this housing, because the bottom line is that everyone knows supply and demand, and that if you've got more people coming in and the same number of units and nothing getting built, particularly now without 421A, prices are going to increase. So what does this building offer? So we know that from the terms of the M-Crown resolution, it offers jobs and it offers the availability of industrial space, as we've talked about, Evergreen being involved. And it also offers a community center, which is something well above and beyond what would be required under anything, including under AMA. But importantly, with regards to the housing, this site offers two things which are not offered by anything else on this block. Number one is that the other rezonings that occurred on Pacific that are R7A are not limited to option 1. And so the built buildings are at option 2, which allows for an average of 80% AMI. Should this property be permitted to be rezoned now, it would be under option 1. And not only would that allow for lower AMIs than any of these other buildings, but it would allow for a full 10% of the building to be at 40% AMI, which is the extremely low affordability option. So the bottom line is that option 1, we understand that there's a massive demand in the city for affordability, but like this at least goes some of the way. 10% of the building being provided for 40% AMI is not nothing. And moreover, it's not just studio apartments or even ones, it's 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms apartments, because MIH requires that the affordable units be provided in the same proportionality as the units generally in the building. So the building does not create an overage or doesn't push density. It can have up to 193 to 200 units. It instead has 150 units, of which 40 are affordable and 15 of those affordable are at 40% AMI. But I think the other thing which is kind of important to note here is that one of the reasons Nadine has been around for this long and has been coming back time after time is because when we look back on her application, she was in with city planning in 2020. I mean, literally, Nadine has been at this for 3.5 years. And you can say whatever you want about other developers and why they were given priority and why she was being forced to wait. But she did wait because one of the reasons was because she knew at the end of the day that this would make more sense to provide M-Crown uses and housing than it would to lie around as a dirt and junkyard. So the fact is that when we talk about her having a shovel-ready site, we mean that. When we looked at the comments that came out after the Atlantic Avenue rezonings, a lot of those comments were from stakeholders who don't show up at a community board meeting and may not even have access to a community board meeting, but people who basically said, yeah, I want to see this housing. And guess what? I don't even live in the district anymore. I had to move out because there's no availability for me. So the bottom line is, like, we're kind of here for those people as well. And the idea that this can go forward and at 6 months, a year, 2 years prior to any area-wide rezoning, actually be ready to provide this units, I think is something which shouldn't be ignored, particularly in this environment where building is so difficult. So again, yes, I understand that there are properties being deregulated. We have no control over that. And it's a shame, and they should be held to the requirements of the law. But we have a chance to actually get people in homes here. And I'm hoping that that's important to enough people that they can support this.
Thank you, Mr. LaBelle. Ms. Caius?
Thank you, Chair Wedderburn. Mr. LaBelle, Nadine Olsner. I think Nadine Olsner and her family have been very, very focused on being even-handed and fair, and I respect her focus on that even-handedness and fairness. But I have a question. I was a little confused about an earlier statement in tonight's presentation by Ms. Olner regarding the number of dwelling units that would be permanently low income. I heard 40, and so I want some clarification on that. And I also want to know, especially from Richard LaBelle, regarding his advice to the various developers that are coming on, whether or not they're using the federal and state opportunities for apprenticeships in the licensed construction trades. So it's two questions. Number of permanently affordable units per Nadine's earlier statement. If she could repeat that and confirm her intention, and whether or not her contractors will be using either the federal and or state licensed construction trades apprenticeship programs.
Ethel, thank you so much for the kind comments. I appreciate that. To answer your question about the 40 permanently affordable units, basically we took the 150 units that we were building and we followed what option one would allow at that level. And that's how we got to the 40. In terms
Just to interject, those are permanently affordable this time.
Yes, thank you. And in terms of the apprenticeships and all of that, that's something that we would consider when we start with our development partner and we work with different contractors to build the building. But thank you for mentioning that. Richard, did you want to add anything?
No, I think that is accurate. I mean, as we go through the Euler process, particularly when we get to the community board and to the Brooklyn Borough president, there's a lot of interest in local contractors as well as MBWE. So I believe that during the course of the process, we would seek to make those commitments.
Well, I'm sorry. As I understand it, the sponsor and the contractors can choose a very large number of their staff for construction trades to be apprenticeships at least half of their workforce. So I'm not understanding what your statement is there. It seems a little vague whether or not your contractors are being guided into these regulated programs that are available on two levels, both federal and state.
So go ahead, Nadine.
No, you go, Richard.
Yeah, no, I think that to the extent that the community board wants us to look into some of those programs and see whether or not we can comply with those, we'd be happy to do that. I mean, admittedly, I'm a zoning attorney. There are attorneys out there who deal primarily with regulatory agencies and as well as construction agreements and such. But we'd be happy to return that information to the community board.
Okay, this was part of the record for the Community Board 8 resolution that there would be workforce development, and so workforce development includes apprenticeship programs, and since it saves a 50% taxable payout on salaries for construction trades persons on these projects, I don't understand why there's any reticence.
Sounds good. Thank you.
I'm
definitely going to look into that. Ethel, I appreciate your comments. And we'll look into it immediately. Thank you.
We'd like to hear back. Thank you.
We will.
Nick?
I'll report back.
Nix?
Yes, hello. Oops, starting video. I just want to share that I'm sharing the feelings of Sarah Lazar, that I'm wondering why not building 100% low income, deeply affordable apartments. I mean, wouldn't you get tax credits for that, incentives? Because the design, the architecture, everything, I really enjoy very much. But I just, as I've lived in this neighborhood too for 20 some years, would really love to see truly, absolutely affordable apartments as Pacific Street 1010 Pacific is existing, and then across the street, what is it, 1034-42 Atlantic Avenue is going to be all market rated apartments, and the buildings on Dean, on Grant and Pacific. So I think you could actually really, and I love all your anticipation and participation, but you could set a milestone by really trying to do 100% affordable and truly affordable apartments. And then I wasn't clear what permanently affordable means. Does that mean it's like somewhat rent stabilized, as in the rent increase is based on the rent stabilization law? And then to Mr. Williams, and as I pointed out, I've lived here on the street. Parking has been really become very hard due to the new buildings, and will get even harder once the new buildings, the other buildings in process will be finished. So I love the idea of electric cars, but as of now, I think people are still having just old-fashioned cars, and we need to not forget about that. So thank you very much.
So I'm happy to just start, Nadine, if that's okay. And Nick, thank you for the comments. You know, as a matter of public record, I sit on the board of a housing nonprofit, and am involved on a regular basis in producing 100% affordable and supportive housing. So it's an issue that is very close to me. But I also, as you know, I'm a zoning attorney and represent individual applicants who come before community boards in the city of New York. And as a matter of public record, on East 241st Street and White Plains Road in the Bronx, we brought through an application similar to this one, although it created even more units. It was an M11 rezoning to an R7D, would have created upwards of 250 units. And it was basically to be done 100% affordable. It was a for-profit applicant who basically was interested in aspects of the building, such as the retail, and was willing to partner with the city to create a true 100% affordable building. Excuse me, that's my light. As of this year, after not having received funding for 6 years on their project, they basically had to terminate the project and to allow other developers to proceed with the site. So the bottom line is, as between building a 100% affordable building, which frankly is very challenging in the city right now, because HPD itself, as people in the industry will tell you, has waiting lists of 5 to 6 years for funding, versus the opportunity to go in privately without subsidy and get these units built now. Nadine, I believe, is of the opinion and the feeling that she'd rather bring something to the table right now. So yes, like I've built 100% affordable buildings through clients and through the nonprofits that I work with, but not every application is good for that. And this is just one of those that is not. But you know, I appreciate the issue, and I just feel that the opportunity to bring something, and to bring 40 units versus no units is you know, something which shouldn't be you know, people shouldn't shake their heads at that. But Kevin, I don't know if you want to answer the other question.
I'm sorry. Restate that. So yeah, car is a car in terms of parking. You know, whether it's electric vehicle or you know, traditional fuel vehicle. I think at the end of the day, we don't really want to be incentivizing either one by providing on-site parking, and there ought to be shared parking solutions in general, which is one of the students' discussions during the June session, and something that should be considered in the area-wide plan. And you know, and along, I would expect with congestion pricing that I would see downward trends on car ownership as well, due to the high cost of actually moving that vehicle through the region and to work. I absolutely, you know, having worked in this area, you know, back on the 1010 Pacific rezoning years ago, starting in 2015, you used to be able to get parking quite easily on the street. I used to park in front of Nadine's property years before I started this rezoning. And I think with the advent of construction vehicles and, you know, closures temporarily, that it's difficult to see what that picture is. But regardless, our parking study basically assumes that the on-street parking is quite constrained, you know, upwards of 90%. The parking demand that's projected from this building, assuming that it, you know, and I pulled up the statistics as requested by the chair, so 10% actually commute to work. In this and the adjacent census tracts, 10% commute by auto, which is quite low. and then car ownership is 78.8%. So I understand that, and I do not believe that it's going to defer much on-street parking. Our demand shows that the building itself would generate about 30 residents, 30 private cars from the residential units. There are 657 parking spaces and off-street garages within a 15-minute walk. There are 186 of those available. That's based on our, and I think that, you know, a developer or developers in this area are strongly influenced to create incentives for those who do have cars and want to live in this district to park in one of those available garages and make arrangements for them. And I do agree, people are still using fossil fuel vehicles, but if you look at the 5-year trends on car ownership of electric vehicles, it's actually quadrupled in the last 4 or 5 years across the United States. You know, I think as long as incentives are present and you see all the major auto manufacturers converting to those in terms of their supply, and as a car shopper, I see a lot more plug-in hybrid options as well. I think we are in a future where it's going to have more electric vehicles. And given the cost of car ownership, the cost of in New York with congestion pricing, I think strong movements and strong supports from the M-Crown rezoning and the Atlantic Corridor rezoning to further capture opportunities for electrical vehicle charging and car sharing is something that should be considered in that process for everybody that comes and seeks to develop in this area. But that's the best I can do to answer that question. And I have a lot of respect for as you know, from a resident in that area about those concerns.
And then if I may say, even if it's an electric car, the car needs to be parked somewhere. So that's all I'm saying.
Oh, yes, right, exactly.
You know,
you need a place to charge.
yeah, and to park, sorry.
There are several of the garages in the area do have EV chargers. You know, so it is becoming a more common thing, but you're right. If you're going to have an electric vehicle, you need a place to put it and you need a place to charge it.
Thank you for your response, Mr. Williams. I'd like to go back because Ms. Lazar has raised some issues in the chat, just in terms of choosing not to develop affordability. It's quite possible, Ms. Lazar, that you have more expertise or knowledge about the state and local programs that are available for tax credits. Since we're going to have a succinct answer period for our next meeting for the purposes of voting, I would greatly appreciate if you would be able to provide that to the committee members for their consideration, as well as asking the applicant team to delineate specific tax credit programs. I know we've had this discussion in the past, and I believe Sarah has consistently brought this up so that we can have somewhat of a definitive answer for consideration of this project, given everything else that's going on and the requirement for us to succinctly respond in September. Right. And at the end of this meeting, I know there are a few more speakers within the committee, but I would love to underline, Mr. Williams, if you would be able to provide that to the board office, so the board office will be able to circulate it. Not everyone on this call is going to be able to capture that information. I thank you for that. There are a few more speakers, but I'm going to bullet point a couple of things that are consistent. And I know this meeting will draw much more attention come September because we're still in vacation mode. So I want to make sure we give due and careful consideration to this application. And I know, Mr. Williams, in regards to parking, the availability of parking, infrastructure, the decrease of parking, right, that there has been considerable community interest in regards to how the DOT is reciting streets. So I expect people to bring heat about that in September. And I always believe in being fair-handed to give you ample warning of such.
Wonderful.
Okay. All right. Hold on 1 second. Let's see who else I need to. I know Gib is hanging out for later. Let's see if we have anybody else. I believe Gib would like to have the last word. I think he may have the penultimate word. And so, Mr. Delming, can you go ahead and make your queries, please?
Sure, of course. Thank you, Ms. Wedderburn. So I'm not sure if maybe this will get what some people have been asking about So Mr. LaBelle, I guess I have two related questions. One question is, does the current proposal plan to make use of LIHTC or other similar sort of federal or state administered tax credit programs or other sorts of subsidized funding, subsidized financing? If it isn't, why not? And related to that is based off of the current proposal. I'm not sure if this information you can share or feel comfortable sharing, but if you can, what is the projected sort of margin that you are expecting to have on this project as it is currently framed?
Thanks for the question. I think that probably what we would do in line with what the chair requested is to come back with some a little bit more specific information. I being involved in LIHTC deals, I know that most of those that I've done have been with nonprofit, affordable and supportive housing developers. So I don't really know of any where we've had a private application that has sought or received that financing. I know that prior to COVID, that a lot of the waiting times and frankly, the city itself has the opportunity for 100% subsidized development. So HPD, you go in, you basically provide for 100% affordability. They finance the construction. You have a share of the earnings of the building on a going forward basis. That's when I mentioned that job on 241st Street in the Bronx. But having said that, there's no current pipeline available that would feasibly get this building built within the next 5 years. So again, happy to come back with more specificity and we can talk about LIHTC and all these other programs, but I just don't think they work for this particular project. There was also, I know, another point with regards to the nature of the affordability and the permanent and how the affordability is permanent affordability. It's through zoning. Those units which are affordable are to remain permanently affordable for the life of the building. They are noted so on the certificate of occupancy. There's a regulatory agreement with HPD and the administering agent who is hired to administer those units. And then the increases, if any, it's not rent regulation, but the increases, if any, are pursuant to adjustments in HPD's AMI numbers. So, but again, happy to come back with some more specifics about other programs. With regards to the margins on the project, I don't know, Nadine, if that's something that you can answer, or whether or not that's something we can come back to community board with some more specificity.
Let's come back to the community board. Thank you. We appreciate all the comments that people have, and we want to be able to respond to you in a detailed format. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Olsner. Mr. Vacconi?
Thank you. I just wanted to mention that I believe this application comes at a very important time with regard to the future of what happens in this area that the community board's been working on for now over 10 years. The AMA draft recommendations were published a few days ago, and I suspect within the next a few weeks, they'll be available for everybody to read. But I want to say that when you read them, you will see that the next steps there are very much the Department of City Planning creating the zoning framework and all of the other documentation that is necessary to move the AMUP rezoning, M-Crown rezoning, whichever, through ULURP. At this point, I don't know that we have a reason to believe the community board will have the level of involvement in that process that we had developing the 2018 zoning framework. I think that our experience during the AMA process was that a lot of the M-Crown goals really have been diluted. As other topics got more focus. So in my view, this application not only delivers more of the M-Crown goals than we would be likely to get through the neighborhood rezoning, but it also offers an opportunity to send a message further down the line and to government, to DCP, and to the public that the community board is still very serious about creating affordable housing, still very serious about creating job opportunities for people who don't have a college education, who need those opportunities in this neighborhood. A couple of things about this project that I think are really important to note is I don't think there'd be any reasonable expectation we could end up with a zoning framework from AMUP that would require the amount of light industrial manufacturing use that's being proposed here. It's been pointed out before that it's not all floor areas. Some of it's below grade for now. I mean, that's true, but we could not hope to get that much through a neighborhood rezoning. And that is the key. That's what we have believed is the key for job growth in that area of employment that we need for people who don't have a college education. Although the AMUP recommendations do call for deep affordability and call for the city to create new programs that create deep affordability, there is no guarantee that that will happen during the Euler process for this. And it's possible, and I would say likely, that we would emerge from Euler for the neighborhood-wide rezoning at MIH option 1, which is what is proposed here. What's different about what's proposed here is the unit size. There is nothing that we would be able to get from the neighborhood rezoning that would create those larger 2 and 3 bedroom units as a function of the deeply or any affordable housing to be built in the broader area. And then the last comment I want to make about this is I think everybody here understands that displacement of people from this community district is accelerating. And the idea of delivering affordable units sooner is much better than delivering them later. So if we have 40 affordable units to bring to this site, bringing them now puts more people in the district who are at danger of displacement in with community preference in the lottery than will happen when they're displaced in another 2, 3, or 4 years. So I think all those things are worth considering. Thank you.
Thank you, Gib. So I'm just going to say to the committee, we have much work to do. I would appreciate and you have always been responsive to the queries from our committee. And I would just underline the applicant team that given that we have a tight turnaround, that any of the concerns that have been expressed, parking, affordability, the apprenticeships, you give us the best possible, not what you think, but what you know. So we'll have the opportunity to refer to data sources ourselves. And even if you have the ability to do this prior to our meeting, so that committee members will take on their full responsibility of referring to that information so they can come prepared to ask thoughtful, pointed questions so that it doesn't reflect what they think, but what they know. And I would also say to the committee, if between now and the next meeting, which we will be voting on this matter, that you also circulate information through our group chat so that we might be able to make careful consideration. So believe it or not, I want to thank the applicant team, and I'm going to say, believe it or not, we actually have a matter before us that we need to consider voting for. So if you have nothing else to say at this juncture, I would like to move on to the application coming from 1235 Dean Street.
Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, you guys. Have a great night.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm calling upon the representative from 1235 Dean Street. Let's begin our presentation.
So sadly I'm on a Mac, so somebody, I think, volunteered.
Mr. Albert, can you provide that to us, please? Share your screen with the materials for 1235 Dean Street.
Or
Great.
And so which image or document would you like pulled up first?
Yeah, that's not so interesting. But those are the notices to the neighbors. There should be a PDF of the actual presentation. Well, while it's being looked for, I can talk about it a little bit, just very generally. Um, the house on Dean Street, we have a staff level approval at Landmarks, and there may be, you may actually see some action based on that at the house currently. But we got a staff level approval for essentially the restoration of the outside, the replacement of windows, the restoration of some windows and detail, and generally fixing up the front facade, replacing the front door, as well as the rear facade.
Thank you for that. But the reason that you're coming before the committee to discuss items which could not be given staff approval. So that's what we'll be focusing on this evening.
Right, and that's what I'm waiting for the presentation. The presentation is focused on essentially a rooftop addition, which includes a bedroom and its bathroom, and a communal stair for the rest of the house to come up to a shared roof deck. There we go.
And say thank you. Thank you, Mr. Albert. Let's go.
Thank you very much. Couldn't do it without you. So I guess you can go to the next page. Those are the floor plans excluding the roof. The roof right now is completely vacant, save for an access hatch. You can see in the roof plan on the far right that the neighboring house to the right, which is, I believe, the east, is one floor higher. So that's why you have essentially a sort of a neighboring wall in black. You can go to the next page, please. And these are the before and after front and rear elevations. So if you could scroll down or up a little bit so we can see the elevation. There you go. There's essentially new structure on the roof that includes a ladder for firemen's access over it. And there's on the front elevation on the left, there's a sort of gray area. That is the stair, the communal stair for the house coming up, and to a roof deck in the front that's set back from the facade that is used by everybody in the house. In the back, you'll see on the far right that there's a pair of doors leading to a small balcony that's associated only with that bedroom. So you can go to the next one. The section shows, this is the section with Dean Street on the right and the line of visibility from across the street. So what it's showing is that the setback is sufficient that the stair is not visible. The bedroom certainly is not visible from Dean Street. The issue for Landmarks, and the reason that we're here really, is the visibility from Pacific Street between a couple of the buildings in the back. And I think if you keep scrolling, that's the existing section. Maybe not so interesting. Okay, so these are current photos of the front, and the mock-up. You have to trust me, but these are after the mock-up is in place. You can't see the mock-up. We're quite confident that nothing is visible from Dean Street.
Sir, may I ask a question? Are you saying that the pictures that we're seeing is before the mock-up was done?
No, these are after the mock-up was in place.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, yeah. Sorry, I wasn't clear on that. You can go to the next page. Okay, so this is the plan that shows the layout of the front. Oh, now this is not the most recent because we got some comments from the Crown Heights North Association and sent new files, but it's easy. It's a very simple change. You can see obviously on the left is the existing roof plan. There's essentially nothing there. In the middle is the floor plan, and on the right is the roof of the proposed floor. So top to bottom in the middle, you have the roof deck for the bedroom. You can see the bedroom, bath, and a stair down to the rest of that unit. And then in the lower left, in the middle, there's a stair coming up from below that accesses what's called a shared roof terrace. Below that in this drawing are AC units, which we got good comment on that those would likely be or possibly be visible. We didn't feel that they were, although the location is somewhat awkward. So we have relocated those units directly across from the stair bulkhead on the east side of that shared terrace. So they're basically on the terrace, on the far right, and they're mounted to an extension of the wall of our property, a vertical extension of that wall. So there's something to mount them to. You can go to the next slide or page. These are sections. That's the section through the stair bulkhead. You can see the stair coming up, the terrace in the back, the setback of that bedroom from the face of the rear wall. You can go to the next one. Thank you. The top view is essentially a view from the neighbor's roof. What has been eliminated is that low wall on the far right. Basically, where it says stucco color 2, that's the stair bulkhead, and that would be a simple rectangle and wouldn't include that little 4-foot extension to the right. The next one, that's a section showing the two terraces, and right where it says shared terrace in the middle, that's where the AC units would be moved. They'd be moved back, so there's no way you would see them. You can go to the next one. That's flipped now, a section flipped, and there you can see those AC units on the front, on the left. Those are no longer there at all. So it's just the stair bulkhead, the door, and the terrace set back from the front. The shared terrace set back from the front. Yep, you can go. That's fine. There's some details of the door, details of the rail, which is very simple, painted iron, code compliant 4-inch spacing on the pickets, and the terrace system are simply pedestals, so that you can have a level concrete pavers. There are also in the lower left there, we're proposing 2 different stucco. Everything is stucco, and they would be 2 different colors of gray. The window systems are also clad wood, essentially matching the restored house. But the next pages are the important ones. This is the view from the back. So you have two buildings on Pacific Street, and we had pictures before everything was leafed out, we made the photo, the leafed out photo on the right, smaller because there's kind of no point. But without any leaves on bushes and trees, this is what you'd see of the addition on the roof. So it's a very, we've tried to make it as simple as possible, set back, gray, and it's lower than the building to the left, but you can't see that at the moment. And there's the absolutely in tatters mock-up that was done right before all the windstorms a few months ago. And these are more photos with the mock-up in place, just pulled back across the street, down the street. So you can see the house to the right is higher. There's that sort of pediment to that building, the house on the left. But our addition is pulled back from Dean Street enough that it's just not visible on Dean at all. And again, these are the more photos of the back. You can see the mock-up in place on the right. On the left, that's what I guess it looks like for half the year when there's leaves on the trees. More mock-up. And I think that's it.
Thank you. At this time, I would entertain questions or comments from members of our committee. Oh, come on now. Land use has no questions. Thank you, Ms. Ortiz Joyner first, and Ms. Young.
Hi, thank you. Just one moment. Sorry. I'm just want some clarification because in looking at the photos, it was stated that the house on the right was taller, but in looking at it from the facade, it doesn't seem that way. Am I looking at the correct property? I think I am.
Let's see. Which page was that? I would think it was maybe up one. Yeah, there you go.
5B.
So the house in question is between the one with the triangular sort of pediment roof and the sort of stripped house.
I see.
To the right. So we're between those two.
So the bulkhead will not be visible from Dean Street across the street?
No, ma'am.
I may have another question later, but at this time, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ortiz Joyner. Ms. Young?
Yes, thank you, Chair Weatherburn. Deborah Young from Crown Heights North Association. And I know Ethel submitted a number of questions and you did, we appreciate your response and clarification and making adjustments. But something just came to my mind as I was watching your presentation.
Yes.
And a question about the extension and if it blocks or casts any shade on the backyards of Pacific Street. And that just came into my mind. I didn't think to ask that earlier.
That's a really good question. I mean, very honestly, I'd have to study that. I think that the sun is lowest to the south in the wintertime, which is probably when, there are fewer leaves on the trees and all of that. And the sun would be most important. That said, it is set back, our addition is proposed to be set back from that that facade, that the garden facade. So most of certainly at certain times of the day, the terrace itself would be in shade, because shaded by the addition.
Okay.
The house to the right, that's a floor higher, would mean that being a floor higher would mean that it would actually cast a shadow onto it. It does today onto our roof, for at the beginning of the day, from morning until the sun passes, overhead.
Okay.
So I think if it's shading any of the garden, it would be in the winter months and in the afternoon hours. But that's purely me estimating things sort of on the fly here. I haven't studied that specifically.
Well, that's something that does particularly is a particular interest. And again, I'm sorry that I didn't think to ask that before, but that's very important to me. People, backyards being cast in shadow because of additions on a building. Because personally, my position individually, and I know we've taken a position, so this is not to minimize that when people want to build up or build out, I think they should go buy a house that meets their needs versus coming into communities, particularly historic communities, and wanting to build up where you could go and have exactly what you want. But that's my position. But thank you for attempting to explain it to me. Thank you.
Attempting being the key word here. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Young. Ms. Mohammed?
Yes, good evening. Just again, Gail Mohammed, and I am the Block Association president on 1200 Dean Street. I do want to acknowledge the fact that there were notices posted on either side of the building. I'm now sitting in the window looking at the triangle-shaped building that's next to his, as well as the one that's taller. So both of them are higher than 1235 Dean Street. In addition, several of the residents on Dean Street did submit questions, and those were submitted to Community Board 8, and hopefully you have received them. They should have been sent out to you in an email.
To me or to CB8?
To CB8. It was sent, they were sent to CB8, and it was my thought that CB8 was sending them out to you.
I have not received them.
I just see something saying that they're in the Dropbox. Okay, it says that the link is at, am I the only one? The link is at the top of the chat. That the comments from our block association are in the Dropbox folder, and the link is at the top of the chat. So I'm just suggesting that you take a look at the concerns that the block association people had. And again, the biggest concern was to make sure that whatever additions were put on, that they're not seen on Dean Street.
Right. So, I mean, I can assure you that the addition as proposed will not be visible from Dean Street, at least in on the public way. I mean, if you live across the street up above, you're going to see something. But I don't know. Where is that the link? It makes me leave the meeting. I get afraid that I'm going to leave it everybody here.
No, you'll get an additional box. So they'll get an additional tab. So you
Okay.
see where it's posted again. So, kindly.
Okay. I'll go look at it. Okay, continue it. So.
Right, but and most of the comments were in support, but I do suggest that you take a look at them.
Okay. Yep, I found it. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Because I'm on the other screen, but you can still hear me, which is great. Okay. No, this is not the questions. Oh, maybe that's it. Dean Street Block Association. Got it. Sorry about that. They're not visible from both on Dean Street. So this is visible from Pacific Street. That is the reason that this wasn't approved at staff level by the commission. Done in a way that maintains it. Right. So it is not visible from Dean, but it has that limited visibility from Pacific, and in regard to the aesthetic of it, we've tried to make it as simple and background as possible, so it doesn't compete with any of the architecture of the existing facades. That's part of the reason it's set back as well, so it's disassociated from the existing facade, garden facade. I'm not sure if that addresses things, but
yes, yes, it does. It's fine.
Okay.
Thank you. I know that both the 1200 Dean Street Block Association, put that all together in the right order, has reviewed it, and China has also, not that we are bound by our community organizations that have worked so hard for preservation in the form of landmarking, not that we have to hold to what they have to say, but they are the experts in their particular communities. So could you, Deb or Fior, for the sake of those who may not have read the letter in the Dropbox, could you just bullet point what you had to say about these projects?
Is Ethel on because she prepared the letter, or she's still here?
That's good. Yeah, that's true as well. Ethel, would you be able to bullet point the findings of China?
Okay. Let me, I will see if I can find it. Hold on.
Okay.
Sorry.
Ethel, if you're speaking, you're on mute. We can't hear you.
Okay, the findings were after the HVAC units were moved up against the added retaining wall, not an added wall, next to the neighboring building, where that we didn't find any true effect on the appearance of the building in the historic district, and we had no reservations for the planned HVAC position on the rooftop.
Thank you, Ethel. Ms. Muhammad, is your hand raised or still raised? Do you have something that you'd like to say?
No, it's still raised. I'll take it down.
All right, guys, not that I would like to prolong meeting time, but I'm going to ask if you have any more questions. And if I see that there are not any more questions, Ms. Neal, I would call for a vote.
I have one quick question. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Ms. Ortiz-Joyner.
I know this is out of land uses purview in regards to our vote tonight, but just out of curiosity, how many families will this be? Is it one family? Or,
it's 4 families.
It's 4. Is it a rent? Would it be rented?
It will, when it's completed, it will be for sale, each individual unit.
The co-op condo?
As I believe a co-op.
Thank
Not certain, but co-op or condo.
So could you just give me an estimate on your certainty regarding that statement, not co-op, not condo? Because I believe Ms. Ortiz Joyner is alluding to something else. So you're saying it's going to be a 4-unit dwelling upon completion, which you plan to sell?
Yes.
Okay. And you're unsure as to whether it's going to be cooperative or condominium?
Right. I'm not sure on that. My guess is that it would be co-op because they're much more common than small condos, but
Okay, all right. Thank you so much. So seeing no more raised hands, are there any queries that I would need an audible cue for? Okay, hearing nobody jumping in, Ms. Neal, would you be so kind? Oh, sorry, I forgot. We need a motion before we can vote. Mr.
Gibb
McConey, would
had
you
his
like to
hand
make a
up.
motion?
Yeah, I did just want to mention one thing. I mean, just to the applicant's point, I think the whole crux of this is the view from Pacific Street. You know, I don't love the view. I mean, I don't live in the Crown Heights North Historic District, but I don't love the view from Pacific Street. I don't really love seeing that extension there, but I also realize that the potential for more exceptions like this is probably not that great. I mean, this requires a view through a block, you know, behind the house, back to the back of a house. And it looks like if once the leaves come in on the trees, that's obscured. So if this was something that I think I might not be comfortable with it if it was something that would be likely to happen a lot, but it seems like it would not be very likely to happen. And I think the opportunity for precedent is not that great. So I guess it sounds like we're at that point in the meeting, I'll make a motion that the committee support the application as presented.
I second.
Thank you so much, Mr. Vicconi and Ms. Tyus. Ms. Neal, would you be so kind as to call the roll?
Sorry, I have too many tabs open. Pierre Albert.
Yay.
Thank you. Albert Appleton.
Yes.
Thank you. Lisa Atkinson. Princess Ben James. Robert Callahan. Edward Delman.
Yes.
Thank you. Michael Francoeur. Karen Gray.
Yes.
Thank you. Kathy Islin.
Yes.
Thank you. Jennifer Jordan.
Yes.
Thank you. Zerzima Jordan.
Yes.
Thank you. Nicole Lemla.
Yes.
Thank you. Francis Langley.
Yes.
Thank you. Dr. Sarah Lazar.
Yes.
Thank you. Kwasi Menza. Mimi Mitchell. Fior Ortiz Joyner.
Abstain.
Thank you. Brianna Peppers. Robert Puka. Jack Robinson.
Yes.
Thank you. Kim Robinson. Mark Thurton. Ethel Tyus. Miss Tyus.
Yes.
Thank you. Gibb Vicconi.
Yes.
Thank you. Sharon Wedderburn.
Yes.
Thank you. Elaine Weinstein.
Yes.
Thank you. And Deborah Young.
Abstain.
Thank you. Did I miss anyone or did anyone just not unmute themselves in time to vote?
Mimi, I didn't hear your vote. Are you still here? Okay. Ms. Neal, can you please tell us the results?
The motion passes 15 in favor, 2 abstentions.
Thank you. Thank you.
And,
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mimi Mitchell abstained. Sorry.
So it's 15 in favor, 3 abstentions?
That's correct. 15 with 3 abstentions.
Thank you, Mimi. So guys, I want to thank you so much for spending almost 2 hours with us on a lovely August afternoon, or I should say evening. And I just want you to, I want to thank you for your participation. I want to thank you for the thoughtfulness that you've brought to this. We have a lot of responsibilities, and I would like for everyone to make sure that they review the materials for next month's meeting, which we're going to be meeting the first Thursday of September, so that we might be able to quite chew on the matters before us and have a succinct meeting. One of the things that we have a reputation for is meeting for 3 hours, and I would love that to not become the norm again. So with all of that, thank you, Mr. Van den Boot. I think I'm close, for your participation. And everyone, thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your summer.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.